If you are in your 30s and have had a hard time navigating around romantic connections and found little success in your romantic life, there is a good chance you may be carrying mother wounds. And today, I'm going to dive deeper into how women tend to lose themselves in a romantic connection in the pursuit of finding love in a partner that often mirrors the emotional unavailability they grew up with. While this content today is geared towards women, please know that men can also carry similar mother wounds, and in this case, the men are more likely to be drawn to women that will mirror back the same qualities from their mother, and this isn't a blanket statement. However, it is the most common dynamic that is seen in toxic relationships. So, for men who are listening to this, I invite you to listen with an open mind as you may resonate with some of these patterns in your own relationships. Growing up with parent or parents who are chronically emotionally unstable that don't honor your development, and sometimes it's a combination of having emotionally absent parent and a reactive parent or emotionally explosive parent, which often results in walking around eggshells, not knowing when to expect good love or bad love, and there is a sense of unpredictability in the relationship dynamic. Fundamentally, those with emotionally unavailable parents will not learn healthy relating. If you were to ask around, some adult children will not be able to put in words to explain their dynamic with their parents and would often say they are okay, but it's complicated because such depths of connections are beyond the understanding of another person who doesn't have awareness of human psychology based on trauma. If you find yourself always falling for an emotionally unavailable man, or for men who are listening, emotionally unavailable women, chances are you have mother wounds that you are probably not aware of, and this is not your fault. However, the good news is that you can work on this and come out of this dynamic. Your reality can change, and keep watching until the end so you can probably understand why you are drawn to a certain type of men or women when it comes to pursuing a romantic connection in your life. A mother wound comes from a mother who did not treat their children with love and compassion, and this is way more common and sometimes expected in some cultures and traditions. These mothers are usually disconnected from their own heart space and continue to operate from a place of wounding that they carried as a child from their mother or parents, and they will continue this pattern when they become a parent. A lack of exposure or awareness would allow them to think this is the right way of parenting because they never had the chance to connect with their own emotion or understand their own feelings, which is then often projected back onto their own children. This one trait doesn't make the mother a narcissist. However, the child will not experience real bond, relating, or emotional connection with the most important figure in their life. A mother is the first relationship a child will have in their life, and if the mother is inconsistent or unable to attune to the child, this creates inconsistency in the child's emotional development. This inconsistency will dictate the way the child will perceive their own self-worth, and this will form their attachment style towards a more insecure attachment as they develop. Most children with mother wounds will develop low self-worth and view themselves as being inadequate for not really receiving their mother's love or acceptance. And this will perpetuate a continuous cycle of unhealthy relationships into their adult life. And it can be much worse if these children did not have a healthy father figure. So let's move on to understanding some of the signs that can indicate that you likely have mother wounds. And just know that you may not have all the signs, you can have one or more signs, but this will help you to understand where these patterns might be coming from. And that also allows you to understand yourself a little better as to why you would be drawn to certain type of partners, or why you would engage in certain behaviors, or even tolerate certain behaviors that you don't necessarily agree with or appreciate. The first sign of having mother wound is the inability to set and hold healthy boundaries. You tend to be more accommodating to behaviors that you don't necessarily like or agree with, but you would still put up with certain behaviors, just like how you learned from your mother, especially if you are not taught or allowed to have boundaries. Now, why this often happens is because the mother herself often doesn't have any boundaries to hold, and therefore she would not be able to teach her child how to hold or have healthy boundaries. So you would often find yourself struggling to set and hold boundaries for fear of not being liked or rejected, or a possible reaction from the other person. So it is so much easier to just put up with bad behaviors, and you can probably identify some of these patterns in the way you connect with your mother, and this will most likely show up in your romantic connections as well. The next sign we have is insecure about your body and physical appearance. Now, this is actually quite huge, and I just want to say to those who are listening, this is very common. A lot of adult children who were not emotionally connected or never felt emotionally connected with their mother will often struggle with body image. Now, the lack of physical touch from the parents in childhood, especially mothers, can make the child feel uncomfortable in their own appearance. And this can also happen when the parents are superficial and image focused. Now, for women, sometimes they have mothers who would subtly shame them for their appearance or body weight, for being overly skinny or fat, and they would also say things like they were so much slimmer or thinner or had better appearance at your age. And sometimes this is also done deliberately in the presence of other family members or relatives, and this is very painful experience for a daughter to grow up with, as she will feel inadequate in her own appearance and would develop a sense of low self-worth even if she is a physically attractive woman. Now, this will play out in their relationships. These women will often experience extreme discomfort in their own intimate relationships, and some women simply struggle with intimacy that can affect their relationship or marital life. Body dysmorphia and various other insecurities on their physical appearance is very common and can have a huge impact on their adult life, as a lot of these adult children become extremely image conscious. So if you happen to know someone who seems very image conscious, or you see this in yourself, you can probably see where this can be coming from. The next sign is, okay, so this is also very common, and we would see this in a lot of adults, which is codependency in relationships. So if you struggle to make decisions in your life and always count on others to validate your decisions, anything that is important to you can sometimes feel like you are being selfish for putting yourself first, and you also tend to be self-sacrificing to your own detriment sometimes, and you have this chronic need to put others before you to feel a sense of purpose. Now, in some cases, this codependency in relationships often manifests as having an imposter syndrome as well, where they don't feel worthy or deserving of their hard earned success or achievements, even if the data proves otherwise. Now, have you felt a sense of accomplishment and temporary excitement to only feel like it hardly matters the next moment? It's like it's no big deal, and you start doubting yourself if you were deserving of it, while there were others that have worked hard on the job. Now, that's what it feels like because there isn't someone significant in your life approving or validating your accomplishments. And when you have not received that your whole life since you were a child, it damages your self concept and self worth, and many adults will never know this until they start going to therapy and educate themselves and develop some awareness around trauma. The fourth sign, okay, this one is very important as well. Unable to regulate emotions or self soothe in healthy ways. Now, a child is heavily dependent on their parents. So, a child that was never hugged by their mother or received emotional validation will have a hard time regulating difficult emotions as an adult. This will often show up in the form of having extreme anxiety, and for some women in their later adult years, they can go on to develop a lot of illnesses and autoimmune disorders that have been scientifically proven by experts, which has been traced back to severe psychological trauma in their body. When women struggle to regulate their emotions or self soothe, they become an easy target to their toxic partners who will take advantage of their vulnerabilities, and they would use this to keep them around for their own self serving needs. This is why we often hear a lot of women who struggle to pull themselves out from toxic relationships because they don't have healthy emotional regulation skills to cope with the withdrawal from the connection. And even if they do, they would very easily go back to the toxic partner after a brief reconnection and reconciliation. This can keep them going back into the loop of push and pull. Sign number 5. Now, this is also a very common sign, and I know of a lot of people who struggle with this. I have also struggled with this my entire life, but fortunately, I have done a lot of healing work and I am more healed. So, the sign number 5 is fear of abandonment. This is a deep sign of a mother wound where you don't feel wanted or accepted and have a sense of deep longing to be seen and accepted. This can show up in every area of your adult relationships like friendships, family, and especially your romantic life. However, for a lot of adults, though, and including myself, usually the signs, the fear of abandonment is not so evident in other relationships. However, it gets triggered mainly in romantic connections. There is always a lingering fear of impending doom, and you can be overly critical of yourself for fear of not wanting to do something that can lead to rejection or abandonment. And sometimes these very fears will drive your actions to self-sabotage, and you would do everything that would lead to what you fear the most, which is fear of abandonment, which then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I would like to cross-reference this to women operating in their masculine energy, working and providing, eventually creates an imbalance and prevents the mother to truly step into her nurturing feminine energy, because she could be exhausted after a long day at work or worrying about paying bills, which then somehow manifests into some form of neglect or abandonment when the child is present. Because when a mother is taken out from her nurturing feminine energy, the children will suffer the most and feel unwanted due to the mother's inability to stay fully present. This isn't to vilify the mothers, but to shed some perspective that they are only human and can only do so much. Which is why traditionally women stayed at home and took care of the family while men went to work to provide. But times have changed and the roles have been reversed, and we can see the aftermath showing up as trauma for many adults. Sign number 6: chronic self judgment, self criticism, and comparison. So you tend to grow up to become overly critical of the self and the people around you, often not feeling good enough no matter how much you accomplish. And as I shared earlier, this would often manifest as having imposter syndrome, where you don't feel deserving of your own success and accomplishment. And you can often dislike so many things about yourself because you never really connected and felt accepted and loved by your mother. So you have trouble believing that you are worthy of love. Next we have is self-doubt, not being able to trust yourself. So there is this chronic sense of low self-esteem. You tend to doubt your own judgments even when you can intuitively feel something isn't right. But your own inability to trust yourself and others will keep you in a state of confusion and hypervigilance. You also struggle with trust issues in your romantic life, which often leads to a very frustrating situation with your romantic partner. The last sign: fixer, rescuer, or enabler mindset. Now, this is actually very important, especially if you have found yourself being stuck in unhealthy or toxic relationships. This is another deep sign when you have a tendency or need to want to fix or rescue someone who could be having a hard time in their personal life, or their story of their past relationships can draw you in so much that you feel deep empathy and care for them that you will overlook other red flags and have a mindset that your love, care, and affection can change that person. Have you ever thought to yourself, oh, this person has gone through so much in life, it must have been tough, and I can feel their pain and feel sorry for them. I am going to do all this, maybe being more patient, understanding, and loving can change them and heal them. That's exactly what a fixer mindset looks like. And having this fixer mindset is not the same as having empathy. Empathy is when we are able to see others for their own struggles and challenge objectively and offer compassion without neglecting and bending over our own needs and boundaries. And a fixer, on the other hand, will rationalize all their bad behaviors and reason themselves to stay in that connection and help that person to their own detriment. When you have mother wounds, you are more susceptible to toxic relationships, becoming emotionally unavailable. That will impact your ability to show up as a healthy partner, and you will most likely end up passing on your trauma to the next generation. Having mother wound will push you into toxic relationships because that's what feels like home. Anything that feels remotely healthy will seem boring, strange, no chemistry, because you don't relate to healthy connection. If you want to heal these wounds, you can start by doing the shadow work and inner child healing.